Hi everybody, Victor with Master Book Flippers. All right, so I've got a great video for you guys today. So this is video number 2 in our introductory series on using Keepa. So if you missed video 1, you might want to go check that out. That talks about setting up Keepa and really understanding the very basics of reading the Keepa chart. So in this video, we're going to take it a step further and figure out how we're going to make better buying decisions using the Keepa chart. Here's what really should be done when you are flipping books on Amazon. This is the smartest way to make the best buying decisions on flipping used books on Amazon. Okay, so it's 3 different things. It's reviewing the Keepa chart. It's doing the financial analysis. Okay, in other words, am I making a profit? You can look at the Keepa chart. Sometimes you can tell it looks profitable. Sometimes it's not. But is it enough profit? Is it enough ROI? Those type of things. So that's sort of the financial analysis. And then lastly is looking at the Amazon listing, where you actually would, put it in your cart and buy the book. All right. So that's generally the scheme of how it would work in this video. So we're only really going to be talking about the Keepa chart. I think I've made videos in the past and it might be confusing for people. So I think if I just break it down for you, we're just going to talk about the Keepa chart on this video and try to, focus in so you guys can better understand and make better buying and rejection decisions. And I'll talk about that further in a minute. Now, let me say this a little bit further on what we're doing here. There are many, many people who've sold hundreds of thousands of books, probably collectively, that don't use Keepa charts, right? And they are sourcing the books typically using a scanner and going out to thrift stores and not really having the time to analyze the Keepa chart thoroughly. I believe over the years, these apps, these mobile apps have gotten better. And now some of them have some sort of a Keepa chart. It's not the full Keepa chart. And, maybe you can use that. But the focus of what we do is online book arbitrage, where we want to have all the best information we possibly can. This is the best way you should be doing it. So, and I know I'm spending a little bit of time on this because a lot of people have heard different things, right? They've heard, I've heard, so-called gurus in selling online book arbitrage software simply go with the financial analysis and looking at the Amazon listing and without even paying any attention whatsoever to the Keepa chart, right? And then on the other side, there's people that just look at the Keepa chart and say, oh, yep, we're going to buy this book. If you want to do it correctly and you want the best results, you're going to incorporate all 3 of these things. Before I jump in, two other quick things. We've got a free Keepa guide out there for you, do's and don'ts and all these other things. So we're going to incorporate a lot of what I'm talking about on my Keepa videos. This one, the previous one, and we've got an advanced video coming out. So if you want something tangible you can hold and read, we've got that free guide for you. So there'll be a link below for you to download that. And in this video, we are going to show you the Master Book Flipper software, but I'm not going to, the point of this video is to talk about Keepa. Okay, I'm not going to, so don't worry if you miss something and say, why is he doing this? What's this on the Master Book Flipper software, right? Those will be, we've got other videos on that. We'll come out with new videos on using the Master Book Flipper software because we've made a ton of updates recently, but really we're focusing on this video just on the Keepa charts as best we can. Okay, so when we look at the Keepa chart, really what you want to do, what you want to say to yourself is one of 2 things. Either I'm going to reject this book by looking at the Keepa chart, or I'm not going to reject it. Keep in mind, again, not rejecting it doesn't mean you're going to buy it. Okay, so that's why within our software, what we built right up front is this giant rejection button, right? And we're rejecting it based upon the Keepa chart. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few examples. These first few examples are going to be rejects that you're going to reject. You're going to look at the Keepa chart and you're going to want to reject immediately. Now, again, a lot of these examples I'm giving you are not necessarily ever going to be in Master Book Flipper software. Okay, we curate our database, so we're not going to give you garbage that's going to waste your time. That doesn't mean every single book you're going to buy. Of course not, right? There's all these 3 factors I just mentioned, and under each one of them, there's some additional information you're going to want to gather. But that being said, not everybody's using the software, and this will help you really understand when looking at Keepa charts, maybe why we curate our database and how you can just look at a book immediately and know that, hey, I'm never going to buy that book. Okay, so let's go over a few examples. So I'm just going to click on Keepa and we'll look at this book. And this book is a very inexpensive book, and this is a book you would not find in our software, and I would immediately reject it. It's dirt cheap, all right, $3, maybe there's shipping involved, but if we're selling this book at about $20 or less, it's usually not worth our time, even if it sells quickly. Maybe you can make $1 or $2, whatever, but this is a book that I would simply reject immediately. So we would just click this button, reject, and we move to another book. And let's look at the Keepa chart on this one. Here's another one, same thing. This one is an inexpensive book. The Amazon price is $24. So I would just look at this. I wouldn't need to go and do any of the other things I mentioned, looking at the offers or anything else. I would just immediately reject this book. And I believe this one is the same thing. Yeah, let me just skip over that one. Same thing. This book is cheap. This book is inexpensive. Now, again, I hope you've watched the first video so you understand how do I come to this so quickly. You know that it's because of the black used line, and it's also because of the used buy box, and it's also because of Amazon's price. And especially with this one, this is Amazon selling at $19.99. I don't really care what happened in the past all that much. We're going to delete this book or reject it immediately. Okay. And again, I said I was going to talk about the software, but when we do reject it, then we don't see this book for the rest of the day, which is helpful to your flow. Let me just skip down and look. These are all rejects, I guess. All right, let's look at this one. Okay, so this one's just a slow seller. Now, I do have this set on a year, so this book has only sold a couple times in the past year, and it doesn't even have any used offers. So again, this is one that wouldn't show up either, but this is a very slow seller. And I don't necessarily need to look at the average sales rank. I just look at the Keepa chart. You could if you wanted to, and you see that the average sales rank on this book is 3.7 million. Look at another one. This is probably along the same lines. Okay, so this one is not. And this one might be one where you would see there's no Amazon on it, right? We have it enabled. We don't see Amazon there. Let's flip that off. And we have the new price of $53. Okay, that's the high price kind of. So we can look at that. And where are we today? We actually see that there is a very low offer at about $25. Now, I put this one on here purposely because this is one that I wouldn't necessarily reject immediately. Doesn't mean I'm going to buy it. I would actually, on this book, I would probably favor rejecting it. But what we would do is say to ourselves, okay, this is one we might consider. And then we would go in and we would price it out and see what the profit and ROI is inside the software. I'm not going to do that right now. That's for another day. But just to give you an idea, this one might be one that you might want to consider. And remember, I talked about in the last video about supply and demand. That's why we want to look at the bottom chart. And you don't get this information, with all the softwares. That's why we like to just use Keepa. Gives you and you can see the supply is very, very low. There's only like one person selling the book, right? So that's a positive signal. If you buy the book pretty cheap, where is it at 25? Maybe we sell 45. That's probably not enough profit. And you may not know this, by the way. So I know I sound like I'm going fast, and maybe I am, but I understand inherently when a book might be profitable enough and when it wouldn't be. Now, this book happens to be a pretty quick seller, as we can see by the sales rank line, which is good, but at the same time, it's probably not profitable enough for me. Okay, now let's go and let me look at a couple that you might consider, right? So we're going to look at our right away, a few examples, say, would we buy this book? We're not going to say we're going to buy it, but so this is a book that we would consider. It's inexpensive. The lowest buy box seems about $30. We can buy it for maybe $9 plus shipping. And historically, it's sold for a lot more. So again, I'm not saying I'm going to buy that book, but I've just looked at it. I've even looked at the bottom chart where the supply has gone up, but it's not tremendously high. And it's been sort of high in the past. So this one I might consider. And the other thing is, I said this in the previous video, you want to be manipulating the chart. So to take it a step further, if I'm just glancing at it, I might make one decision. But if I were to go out and hit all, then maybe my perspective would change. And we could see historically this price is pretty low, right? You can just, I'm selecting a few years here. It's fairly low, right? So that's sort of a good sign. So that sometimes can be, you know, I say we're going to look at the Keepa chart and kind of make a reject decision or not. And sometimes you might change your mind when you start looking at the year, or you might zoom in or something like that, and you make a further assessment. But this one wouldn't be one that I would just right away immediately reject. All right, let's look at another one. All right, so this one again is historically, it looks pretty low. And if I go all, yeah, it looks like it's the lowest. This might have been, you know, one of the flip types that we have is lowest ever. That's what this probably is. Doesn't mean we're going to buy it, but it looks pretty good. Okay, just looking at this, I wouldn't reject this book right away. And this seems to be a textbook, so that's also something to consider, the time of year, and you want to make sure you know the sales pattern. Okay, so that's a consideration. Let's look at a couple more, and then we'll dive into the Keepa chart a little bit more. Okay, so this one I probably would reject. The price has just gone up quite a bit. It was about $50. It just went up to 62. So I think when I was making this, maybe or pulling this example, it probably was at 50. So that might be more appealing. Although it's probably could still be profitable. So again, we you know, if you're making the decision, you don't always have to make a definitive decision on whether or not you're going to reject it with only looking at the Keepa chart. It's a good thing to reject books. That way you can quickly to move on to another one. But when we're not sure, then we would go in here and we would plug in the numbers and see what the profit and ROI is. And we have a lot of this stuff is pre-filled for you. So if we were to buy it at 59, sell it at 109, we'd have a $22 profit. 37% ROI, I would immediately reject this. Okay, we're not looking for a profit and ROI or an profit ROI combination that low in this case. All right, let's move on to another one. All right, so so this one is definitely one I would consider because the price is pretty low and has just dropped quite a bit. And you know, not a ton of profit, but you know, sometimes you can do really well. And this is a good strategy I recommend to new sellers where, hey, especially if you're coming from doing thrift stores, right? Say buy in some inexpensive books, are less risky. You know, you can only lose so much money if you're buying a low cost book, but oftentimes with these low cost books, the ROI will be higher than if you spent, for example, you know, $45 on a new book. You know, maybe you make a $30 profit, but the ROI would be quite a bit less than a book like this that is the purchase price is lower. All right, let's look at one more. Okay, here's another one where I would not reject this right away because the price is low. This is a fairly steady seller, and the history of selling is pretty high. You could see over here 140, 135, whatever, and we can purchase it at maybe about 61, maybe, but don't forget there's plus shipping. That's why, again, I talk about looking at the listing. So we're not going to make a buying decision, but on this one is one that I would not just immediately reject. All right, so that's kind of the basics of what I want to really drum home to you guys that's important as far as looking at the Keepa chart. Hey, are we going to reject it or we're going to go further? And going further does not mean that you declare that you're going to buy the book. You need to do some more due diligence and do some pricing to see if it makes sense. Okay, now a couple other things you need to understand about the Keepa chart. So first of all, the Keepa chart has advanced over the years. And when I first started flipping used books on Amazon, we did not have what we have today, which is the used buy box price listed on the Keepa chart. Okay, so that is what you can see. Let me zoom in a little bit, and you can see that's the purple. Okay, these purple dots. That's what the used buy box is at that time. So if you, so you might wonder, that's what I was just saying, is why don't I see it like way past here? Because on November 1st, 2022, that's when it first started to appear. Okay, so November 1st. So that's just so you know. So if you're wondering why, but typically you don't really need to usually go back that many years to see what had happened. Usually the last couple of years is usually sufficient. But that's one thing you just want to know about the Keepa chart that I didn't reflect earlier. Okay, the other thing you need to understand is, remember in the last video, and most of you seeing this probably know this, is that when you see a big dip in the sales rank line, that is likely a sale. So if we examine the Keepa chart here, let me take off the buy box so not to confuse things. You can see here that we had 8 used offers, and by the way, there's no new offers or no Amazon offers that would have impacted this. So fairly certain that a used book was sold on July 21st. And if you look over here on July 20th, there were 8 offers, and then it did drop down to 6, but it doesn't coincide exactly, right? So because the way Keepa is getting their data from Amazon, their different feeds, there's a technical reason for it. So just know that don't always think that this is exact. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it could be off several hours like it is here, which I believe happened here. So again, just trying to help you better understand how to read the Keepa chart, and don't always think that that exact intersection is always where the sale took place. It could be a little bit off because of that timing. Okay, the other thing I want you to have command of is understanding the scale. And I know I've talked about this in the other video. You can see on the left here, the scale goes from 0 to 2,500. And that's really not that helpful when looking at the Keepa chart when the scale is that large. And the reason it's that large is because someone was listing the book for nearly $2,000 in used condition. So if we were to so how do we adjust it? So we can't just go in and click it like you could in Excel or something and change the scale. But if we remove this, if we select an area that does not include that portion, then the scale will change significantly. So if we look to the right, if you were just looking at the Keepa chart from this section from about August to September, it looks like the price hasn't really changed at all, right? But if we zoom in, I'm going to click here and grab on my mouse, let go. So a couple things happened, right? On the left, the scale changed significantly. Now it goes from $98 to $105. Okay, it's a huge difference from what we saw before. And also now this black line reveals that there were several price drops that occurred, right? From a whole bunch of them from $99 up to $102. Now that's not even a huge price jump, right? It's just a few dollars. But just the point I want to make clear to you is that you just can't look at a Keepa chart like this and always be able to make an assessment of what's going on. You have to manipulate it, zoom in, zoom out. And this is a good example as why you'd want to do that, because we don't have control of the scale unless we were to remove something. If I were to remove used and maybe just put new, now we see a completely different scale, although it is pretty high because somebody's listing new at $996. Okay, so in this example, looking at it like right now, as I make this video, not that interesting, this Keepa chart, right? But I think what is interesting and the lesson to be learned had to do if you were to look at this Keepa chart about a year ago. So let's do that. First, let me click all. And let's pretend for a moment it were around July. Let's say it was around August 23rd, the year before. Let's zoom in. Okay. So if you were to look at this Keepa chart like this, at that time, you should be saying to yourself, holy cow, look what happened here. This book was selling for over $200, $230, again, $168. And then as we go over here, what has happened? Well, a couple things have happened. First of all, it appears as though the demand, again, the demand is the sales rank line, is not where it was the previous textbook season. Why is that exactly? I don't know. You can maybe go do some research and figure out which colleges were no longer using this book. Maybe they did go to a newer edition, whatever the case may be. So that's troublesome, right? And but you might say, oh wow, look, I can buy this book for $18 and maybe I'll sell it for $168 next college textbook season, right? And if you make that assessment here, it's probably a mistake. And why I tell you to look at both charts, right? And this is why you can't just look at the one chart. If I were just looking at if I was just looking at this, it looks pretty appealing, right? You say, oh my, look at this, I'm going to buy this book really cheap. But we don't want to do that. We want to have this on, and we want to pay attention to what happened with the supply. So first of all, the supply of used books has never been higher, okay? So it's not always a bad thing that the supply is going up, but if it's trending up and that's the highest it's ever been, and the demand is going down as it was here, this is one you'd really have to take a long, hard look at before you decide to buy it, okay? So, and then of course, as we go out, now we have the benefit of looking at what happened, but now what's happened is the supply of books has kind of stayed the same, right in the 20 range, but the demand has really gone off and the book is now just about worthless, and it's probably never going to recover, okay? So this is a complete dud, and hopefully if you were flipping books, you didn't pay $50 thinking you'd flip it for $150. So those are things to really consider, and this is a good example of how a book has gone bad when the supply and demand both went in the wrong direction kind of at the same time. All right, let's look at this example. Now, the story that's being told here that you want to interpret, if you look over here, let me zoom in a little bit. You can see that there were no sales, or very few sales from September 16th to August 16th. And you want to know immediately, and you just want to recognize this immediately, that the reason that occurred is because there were no offers. Okay, that's why we have the bottom chart shows us, or there would be an offer here and there occasionally. And there might be an offer that was immediately sold. That's what occurred on these on onesies and Tuesdays. But the point being that on a book like this is that you say to yourself, maybe the demand is steady, but it is showing decline only because there were not enough offers. So sometimes when you can pick up on something like that, other people just think, oh, the average sales rank isn't very good. Well, why is that? Well, it happens to be because there weren't enough offers, right? There's demand there that could not be met because there was no supply. So that's just something important. Anytime you see that, don't always pay attention to the bottom chart as well, although it is revealed somewhat when you see the black line on here. But you could also see if there were any new. In this example, there were no new offers either, and there's no Amazon. So that's a good example of paying attention and trying to figure out, even though it tells you that the demand isn't as high as maybe it should be, there's a very good reason for it. And then if you were able to get a book and get it at a good price, etc., chances are it'll likely sell quickly, which is what happened with many of these people when they would just send in the one book, and it likely sold immediately because there are people waiting on it. They get notified from Alexa or whatever the case may be. Maybe they had a Keepa alert, doesn't matter, but the book would be sold very quickly. Okay, here's just a couple more examples of books that look pretty appealing when you look at the Keepa chart, and you could probably give it a check and then go on and price the book and see if it's worth flipping. So this book isn't terribly expensive. Amazon's topping it out at $40, but right now the lowest price it's ever been is down to $12, so that's good. And there is a new price at $32. If you don't know, there are going to be examples where you can sell above over the lowest new price. That absolutely happens. You'll see that sometimes when you look at the on the offers page, but we're not focusing on that. So that's why you are going to see some books, or many books in certain cases, where there is a new price that might be lower, but maybe somebody just lowered the price, and maybe that's not a static price, or that's been that way for a long period of time. But in this example, this is a book that I wouldn't reject right off the bat let's look at it. And the other thing to keep in mind, I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but especially within our software, we've got direct links to eBay, and we've got an eBay price rating score, which kind of compares the price. I don't want to get into that too much, but point being, getting back to looking at Keepa and just immediately rejecting, I guess the point I'm trying to make is, don't always just think, oh, that's the best price I can get. No, sometimes you can get the price even cheaper on eBay, and that can be worth your time to look at it there. All right, so this is another one. Price is pretty low, really cheap. Amazon's price is at $50. So this is one I definitely would look at further. And this is one, again, price just dropped. It looks like someone probably purchased it. Maybe they were with Master Book Flippers, doesn't matter, but the price is just elevated now. So you can see if we zoom in, it was at 53, now it's at 67. So maybe still profitable, but certainly would have liked to get it at that price. So this price just historically shows it's been selling pretty high, somewhat erratically in different periods. And the only thing, you got to be careful is, we don't have a crystal ball, but Amazon was selling it at 148. They just dropped their price, but they've been a little erratic here and there too. But probably still a decent book. Definitely not one you're going to reject. It's one you're going to look at the offers and price it out and see if it makes sense. The point I wanted you to get home from today's video is that you are going to be rejecting books solely on the Keepa chart, and if you don't reject them, then you move on to the next step, which will be financial analysis and looking at the Amazon listing. Now, don't forget, we've got our Keepa cheat sheet do's and don'ts guide, so that's free for you. You can download that. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in.